Aleph, hey,
Uh, Wait, let's start with Dalet Aleph.
I want to start. Okay, no, no. Where's Dalid, Dalid, Aleph, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. If one separates part of Truma and Maestros, he may take from it Truma for it, but not for another place. Ramea says he may take Truma and Maestros for also for another place. If one had produce in the storehouse and gave one saw to a Levite and one saw to a poor man, he may separate another 8 saws and eat them. So says Rav Meir. One can come and say he may only separate in accordance with the exact quantity. The measure of truma, a generous portion, 1/40th. Beis Shammai says 1/30th. The average person 1/50th, and the grudging person 1/60th. If one separated truma and found that it was 1/60th, it is truma, but he need not separate. If he added it, he is liable to masros, and if he found that it was 1/61st, it is truma. But he must separate again according to his custom by measure, weight, or number. Rebbe said, from even from that which is not close by.
Okay. All right. So
Okay.
just to say this over again because we didn't learn this together, but this is fundamental to the rest of what we're going to be learning, is that um, first of all, in the time this is only applicable to the time when the Kohanim are able to eat the truma batara. Okay,
Yeah.
nowadays we don't apply this at all because the Kohanim cannot eat batara, so we give like a fractional measure of truma because there's no point giving more.
Right.
Okay, but in the times when you were actually giving truma to the Kohen, then Chachamim made a certain shear of how much is expected, and it's according to Ayin Yafe, Benoni, and Ayin Ra. So it's a 40th, 50th, or 60th, depending on in these measures. And Beis Shammai bumps it up, bumps each denominator down by 10. So that's as we say, that Beis Shammai says Echad Mishloshim is the Ayin Yafe, is 1/30th. Okay. Um, and once you've taken out the required measure, then your chiyuv is done. And what we were just saying in this Mishnah over here is that if a person took out something that qualifies as truma, and he wants now to give extra truma, what he's allowed to give basically a matana to the coin, but what he's giving now is not actual truma, and therefore it's still chayav in masros, right? The truma that you give to the coin, he doesn't have to take masros off. But if
Right.
you give extra to the coin, now he's got to worry about maser rishon to the Levi. Okay. Um, Mishnah Dalet. Ha'omer l'shtucho. So a guy authorizes his shaliach. Say utrum. He says, go and take truma from my produce. Okay. Torim kedato shel balabai. So the shaliach doesn't use his own discretion. He looks at the balabais and says, what does the balabais normally give? Is the 40th, the 50th, the 60th? Okay. Im eno yodea dato shel balabais, and he doesn't know what the balabais normally gives. Um, Torem kabeinonis, and then you assume that he's a beinonis, and you give 1/50th. Echad b'chamishim. Piches asara or hosif asara, if he added 10 or subtracted 10, in other words, to the denominator. Okay, so he gave a 60th or he gave a 40th. Um, right, truma's a truma. That is still considered truma because he didn't know one way or another really. But lechatchila he should have given the beinoni. But whatever he gave is valid as long as it's between the borders of 1/40th and 1/60th. Im niskaven lehosif afilo achas ein truma sa truma. But if he knew what the Baal Bias was normally did, and
Right.
so if he knew that the Baal Bias normally gives 1/50th, and he intended to give 1/51st or 1/49th, he's violated the shlichus because as soon as he knows for sure, then he has to do exactly what the Baal Bias wants. And if he violates the shlichus, then he cannot. That's again back to Mishnah Aleph in our Mishnah Aleph Aleph, is that if somebody takes truma from somebody else's produce without permission, Okay.
Okay. All right.
Hamarve b'truma. What happens if somebody has got a really, generous, a really generous outlook and he wants to give a nice present to the coin? Okay. How much can he give without without having to add on be concerned that that now the extra portion is chayav in Masros as well? Okay. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Echad Me'asara. He says 1/10. Why 1/10? Ketrumas Maaser. Exactly like the lady has to give a tenth of what he gets from Maaser Rishon. He has to give a tenth of that as Trumas Maaser. So similarly, the Israel who's got the original produce and wants to give Truma Gedola, he's allowed to give up to a tenth of it as Truma, and that can go to the coin. Yaser Mikan Yaser na Trumas Maaser lemakom acher. But if he wants to give more than that, then what he needs to do is add it as Trumas Maser. In other words, find other produce and separate out Maser Rishon, and then take a tenth of that as Trumas Maser to give to the coin. Rabbi Shmuel Omer Mechza Cholin Mechza Truma. He says even if it's 50-50, you can give 50% to the coin and keep 50% for yourself, and that's valid truma. Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva omrim ad sheyishayer sham chulin. They say no, even if the bulk of it is truma, he's allowed to. He's allowed to call the discretion to designate truma goes all the way up to like just less than the entire lot. If he declares the entire thing truma, that's not valid. There's got to be something else behind. But even if he leaves a little bit of chulin behind and says everything else is truma, it's truma and it goes to the kohen, and the kohen doesn't have to worry about separating anything else out of there. Bishlosh prakim misharim es. So there are 3 times during the year when you estimate what's in the basket. In other words, what the produce that needs to be tithed. Babakoros with the first produce, Basiafos. The Siafos is that's the season of the late ripening fruit. In other words, by the end of the summer. Over Emtza Kais, and also in the middle. So I'm not sure why the Mishnah states them out of order. You would have
I
expected
think.
to go in. You would have expected them to go in order, but this is where um, the fruit is ripe, but it's not. They're not huge. Okay, so then the basket will have more than them. Okay, so now how are you supposed to estimate how much is in the basket in order to take truma? Hamone mishabach. It's praiseworthy to count the fruit and see how many items are in the basket. V'moded mishabach mimenu. But if somebody measures, so moded is basically taking the volume, right? So
Mhm.
so what he could do is he could submerge them in water and see how much water spills out. Um, and so that's better than counting because there's some fruits that are big and some fruits that are small. But shokel mishabach mishlosh tan. But weighing them is the best way to do it because that way you make sure that the produce is properly measured and you can give a good estimate. And this, by the way, is aside from the fact that we've said before that truma has to be given as an approximate measure, truma gedola.
Right.
And you're
Okay.
not supposed to use an exact measure to measure your truma, but knowing how much produce you're giving, that you have to do. You have to know exactly how much produce there is in order to be able to estimate how much truma to take from it. Okay, now we can do aleph hey.
Okay. One may not separate truma from leket, shikha, peah, or hefker, but from ma'aser rishon from which truma has been separated, or from ma'aser sheni, holy things which have been redeemed, or from libel for the exempt, or from the exempt for the detached. I'm sorry, for the libel, and from detached for attached, and from attached for detached, and from new fruit, and from the new for the old, and from the old for the new, or from produce of Eretz Israel, the produce grown abroad, or from produce grown abroad, or from produce of Eretz Israel. And if he did separate truma, it is not truma. Five may not separate truma, but if they did separate, their truma is truma. He who is mute or drunk or naked or blind or a balkari would not separate truma, but if they separated truma, their truma is truma. And one may not separate truma by measure, by weight, or by number, but he may separate from what has been measured, weighed, or counted. One may not separate truma in a measuring basket or a hamper, but he may separate in them half or a third or of the volume. And one may not separate truma in a saw, half full, and for half of it is a measure. Okay. And we are on to.
Reus, Aleph Daled.
If one was yielding a cake of pressed figs, and two were not yielding, and two were yielding, and one was not yielding, one may only plow according to their requirements. If there are from 3 to 9, or if there are 10 or more than 10, whether they yield or not, the entire Beisah may be plowed for their sake. And as is written, in plowing and in harvest shall you rest. Since it is unnecessary to state plowing and harvesting in the seventh year, it refers to plowing or harvesting in the year preceding, which enters into the seventh year, and to harvesting at the end of the seventh year, which extends into the year after the seventh year. Rabbi Yishmael says, just as plowing is optional, so is harvesting optional, which excludes the harvesting of the omer. 3 trees which belong to 3 people combined, and one may plow the entire Beit Zohar for their sake. And what space may be left between them? Rabbi Gamil says, for oxen to pass through with their implements. Okay.
One more.
One more? Okay. For if 10 saplings are spread over a bed saw, the entire bed saw may be plowed for the sake until Rosh Hashanah. If they are planted in a row and surrounded by a fence, it is permitted to plow only as much as they require.
Okay. Oktzin.
Okay. Gimel, let's see, Gimel, right. One cuts off flesh from a person or from a domesticated animal, from a wild animal, from fowl, but the carcass of a non-kosher bird and caleb in the villages and all other field greens, with the exception of shmachim and mushrooms. Rabbi Yehuda says, with the exception of field leek, purslane, and parsley. Rabbi Shimon says, with the exception of cardoons, and Rabbi Yossi says, with the exception of kalushin. These require thought and hechsher. The carcass of a non-kosher animal anywhere and the carcass of a kosher bird in villages require thought but do not require hechsher. The carcass of a kosher animal anywhere and the carcass of a kosher bird and caleb in the marketplaces require neither thought nor hechsher. And Red Shimon says also a camel, hare, hyrax, and pig. Dill, once it has imparted its flavor in a pot of food, is no longer subject to the laws of Truma and does not contract Tumas Oakland. Branch shoots and those of Adal and the leaves of the wild luf do not contract Tumas Okalim until they are sweetened. Rabbi Shimon says also the shoots of Apakos are like them.
Okay.
And the Holios. Hey, Gimel. If the pot is whole, Beis Hillel says it protects everything from the becoming Tameh. However, Beit Shammai says it protects only food, liquids, and earthenware. Beis Hillel subsequently ruled like Beit Shammai. If there is a bottle in the upper story full of tahor liquid, the bottle becomes tameh for 7 days, even though the liquid remains tahor. However, if one pours the liquid into a different vessel, it becomes tameh. If a woman is kneading dough in a bowl, the woman and the bowl become tameh for 7 days, but the dough remains tahor. However, if the dough is transferred to a different vessel, it becomes tameh. Beis Hillel was subsequently ruled like Beit Shammai. If the utensils are made of dung, stone, or unbaked clay, everything remains tahor. If the utensil is considered tahor for use with sanctified food or the paraduma procedure, everything remains tahor because everyone is trustworthy regarding the paraduma procedure. The reason for the above ruling is because utensils that are always tahor and also tahor earthenware utensils curtail tuma when combined in the walls of a structure.
Adil.
Okay, Gimel Hay. A sling whose holder is made of woven cloth is capable of becoming tameh, but if the holder is made of leather, Reb Dosa ben Harkness rules it tahor, but the sages rule it tameh. If the finger hole splits, it is tahor, but if the part of the cord that the user holds breaks the sling, retains its ability to become tameh. A woman who was captured by idolaters may eat truma, but they are the words of Rav Dosa. But they can come and say there is a situation in which a captive woman may eat truma, and there is another situation in which a captive woman may not eat truma. How so? If a woman said, "I was captured, but I am pure," they may eat truma because this very mouth that is forbidden is the mouth that has been permitted. But if a witness who testified that she was captured and says, "I am pure," she may not eat truma. There are four cases of doubt in which Rabbi Shua rules that it is tamei and the sages rule it tahor. How so? A tamei person is standing and a tahor person passes by. A tahor person stands and a tamei passes by. An object of tuma is in the private domain and an object of tahor is in the public domain. An object is tahor in the private domain and an object of tuma in the public domain. These are the four cases. There is doubt whether a person touched it or did not touch it, or there's doubt whether one entity formed a roof over them or did not form a roof over them, or there is a doubt whether he moved the tamei and did not move it. In each of these four cases, Rabbi Yeshua rules that the person becomes tamei, but the sages rule in each situation that it remains tahor.
Okay.
And Megillah.
Yeah.
Okay, Daled Beit. On Rosh Chodesh and on Kol Hamoed, people read the Torah. People read the Torah, and we may not decrease them or add to them. And we do not conclude the reading with a section from the prophets. The one who commences and the one who concludes, like reading of the Torah respectively, recite the blessings said before it and after it. This is the general rule. On any day in which there is a Musafah, which is not a festival, four people read the Torah. On festivals, five people read on Yom Kippur, six people read on the Sabbath, and seven people read. We may not decrease them, but we may increase them. And we may conclude the reading with a section from the prophets. The one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recites the blessings said before and after it. We may not divide the Shabbat, not go before the ark. We know where the Kohanim lift their hands or recite the priestly blessing, nor do we read publicly from the Torah, nor do we conclude with a section from the prophets, nor do we make standing and sitting tributes as a funeral, nor do we say the mourner's blessing, nor do the consolations to the mourners, nor any wedding blessings recited, nor is God's name mentioned in the invitation of the grace after meals, in the presence of fewer than 10 men. In the appraisal of lands, 9 men. And a Kohen are regarded, the appraisal of a human is the same. One who reads the Torah may not read fewer than 3 verses. He may not read more than 1 verse. At a time when for the translator and in the section for the prophets, he may not read more than 3 verses at a time. And if 3 verses are 3 paragraphs, we may read them one by one. One is permitted to skip in the reading of the prophets, but one may not skip the reading of the Torah. How much is one permitted to skip? No more than one we cause the translator to pause. The
Okay.
one who can,
We're done.
that's it.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Shavua
Have
Tov.
a, keep warm and you'll be
Yeah.
okay.
You too. Bye.
Bye.